are live. We are live on our Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Thank you guys for joining. We're going to be taking your questions here momentarily, so send them in, whatever you want to talk about. Crazy end to 2021. We did 5 continents in 5 weeks, and it actually seems like it was forever ago, and now we're up and running in 22. This week, our episode features Bob Costas, a 29-time Emmy Award winner, my childhood idol. So I was super excited about that. Literally, I'd been harassing him for more than a decade to get him on the show. Last week, and the reason we're doing this so early today is because it's a lot later in India, in Mumbai. We featured Sachin, the what one columnist referred to him as Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, and Babe Ruth combined. He is arguably the greatest cricket player ever, one of the most famous people in the country with 4 times the population of the U.S. So we spent a few days with him in India, which was just fascinating. So if you want to talk about Costas, if you want to talk about Sachin or anything else, send the questions your way, and we'll be taking our way, and we'll be sending them, or we are taking them momentarily. It would help if I could talk. As a reminder, we launched memberships per your request on YouTube and Facebook, so that's the place you can go to find all full episodes, behind the scenes access, exclusive content, etc. So if interested in that, you can find it on YouTube and Facebook. Again, a lot of you guys are sending in questions, often asking where you can watch the show. Just got one in saying you want to watch in Canada. In Canada, TSN on TV. It's on ESPN in Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, Caribbean, South America. BT Sport in the UK and Ireland. Here in the US, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox stations across the country. Bally Sportsnet's NBC Sportsnet's on cable, clips and taxi cabs. In addition to the long form interview can be found on our podcast. So, trying to put content wherever people are consuming it. One last thing I wanted to mention before we take questions, and also just like a big thank you guys for the opportunity to continue hosting this show. I, as I've talked about before, feel so fortunate to have the opportunity to do this, and it's because you guys continue to tune in to our content. So it's much beyond grateful for the opportunity. Love the guest suggestions. So continue to send them in. You can comment in if you're watching right now on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, or email them to me, Graham@GrahamBensinger.com. The reason we went to Italy for Valentino Rossi, that all started with a guest suggestion that you guys sent in. So continue sending them our way. We love them, and we have a weekly meeting as a team talking about different ideas. So without further ado, wanted to get to your questions. We have Dan, our communications lead, back in the other room monitoring the platforms. And Dan, what's first
Graham,
up?
a lot of people are asking about Bob Costas. They know you've been outspoken that he's been a mentor of yours. Can you talk about some of the things you learned from your interview with him?
One of the things I found most fascinating about Bob, and I mean, he's gone out of his way to be kind to me over the years, much like he has, just about any young, aspiring broadcaster. I mean, the guy, bends over backwards for people only out of the kindness of his heart. Uh, One of the things I found really interesting about him is how he prepares. Uh, you would think, given the fact that he is as knowledgeable and as prepared as anybody out there. I mean, he's the most accomplished broadcaster ever. That for weeks out, he's deep into script writing for his Once Upon a Time Football Night in America commentaries or things like that. And in reality, what he does is, first quarter of the Sunday night football game sometimes, uh, which is the biggest broadcast of the week. And at halftime, he would give these 2-minute commentaries. He is often in the first quarter writing down what he's going to say. It's extraordinary. Uh, if it were me doing that, I mean, I'd be preparing for weeks on end, multiple drafts, refining, etc. He doesn't need to do that, and that just speaks to his talent. Now, that's not to say he doesn't uh, start thinking about it far in advance. He does, but pen to paper happens then. He's often a like prepping Sunday night for Monday exam sort of person, which just speaks to his talent. But I think that's really unique among broadcasters of that caliber. So that was one thing from the research and conversation with him that I was surprised to learn.
And then we're obviously getting a lot of questions about your trip to India. What were some of your sort of favorite takeaways from spending time with Sachin?
Uh, oh man, favorite takeaways. I think just getting insight into Sachin's celebrity was fascinating to me because, being from the States, being an American, cricket's really not a sport I had ever followed, predating a couple of years ago when we spent the day in Mumbai with Virat Kohli. And if Sachin's kind of the Michael Jordan of cricket, Virat's like the LeBron James of cricket. So that was kind of the first time I had, insight into cricket. And I mean, just, the security precautions that have to be taken when you go anywhere with him, the kind of onslaught of people that immediately gather when you go anywhere with him. It was kind of eye-opening. And the humility and grace in which he carries himself is also really impressive for a guy that has had that level of fame since he was 16 years old. Again, taking your guys' questions, send them in. Dan, if you can, when you find one, let me know who's submitting it to. That'd be awesome. But we're live on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Also, just a quick thank you. I have not yet called out our sponsors, which in addition to you guys, the viewers, they're responsible for continuing to put us on the air. So Toyota, Twix, Chase, AT&T, Baccarat, Frito-Lay, so many partners that have been with us for a number of years, and super grateful for their support as well.
Brandon Walker on Facebook. Love the episodes. How much time do you spend flying in a year or a month?
I'm not sure how much time I spend flying in a year. It kind of ebbs and flows. I'd say I'm out of St. Louis, which is where I was born and raised and still live, and where we have our office, where the majority of our 15-person team is based. I probably spend about 250 days a year outside of St. Louis. But in terms of like the actual on a plane, it kind of ebbs and flows. I mean, one of the craziest times that I've ever had was the last 5 weeks of 21, where we were in India, we were in Europe, North America, came back to a couple of occasions, Africa and Antarctica. So it is personally kind of fun to be back out on the road. Admittedly, when COVID first hit, it was kind of a welcome break to not be traveling and to be able to be home and, was working out consistently, and your body kind of starts to get in, better shape again. But you don't realize like how much you miss being out and about until it's taken away from you. So it was, at the Super Bowl a couple weeks ago, and that was kind of the first time in a couple of years being able to go to event, bounce around, run into people, and we get a lot of benefit from that with the show because it allows you to network, meet potential folks you're interested in booking for episodes, etc.
Graham, on YouTube from, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing this exactly correctly, Shantanu, you interviewed Sachin and Virat, two of the greatest cricketers. What is one similarity between both of them that you took away?
Oh man, I'd say the obvious similarity is work ethic, and I mean I think that's very consistent with any elite athlete that we've featured for an episode of the show. Certainly, some are born with more, natural talent than others, but in any of their kind of evolution and as they, as years pass and they ascend the ranks, it doesn't matter, if you're naturally talented or not. If you aren't working your what off, you just aren't going to make it. And both Sachin and Virat, work their asses off. So that is the kind of obvious similarity. Very different, though, in terms of, Virat will say whatever on his mind. Sachin's more reserved. So kind of very different from a personality standpoint, but certainly the connectivity between both of them's work ethic.
From Instagram, loved your interview with Niki Lauda. What was your favorite part of meeting him?
Oh man. So interestingly, we first met Niki Lauda when we were in Azerbaijan in the Middle East taping an episode of our show with former Formula One chief Bernie Ecclestone, who I was just thinking about yesterday because he was a guy who brought the Formula One Grand Prix to Russia, speak glowingly about Vladimir Putin. Granted, this was many years ago, so who knows how his opinion has changed. But as part of the Ecclestone taping, his longtime friend was Niki Lauda, who was in town for the Grand Prix because he was obviously part of the Mercedes Petronas team. And so we talked to Niki as part of that, and it was just great and charismatic and engaging and had so many stories to share. So I said to the guys after that, I'm like, we got to figure out a way to tape an episode with Niki. And he's not known or was not known for liking to do media that much, certainly nothing that was extensive or of kind of the profile nature where there are these long look backs on his life, path to success, highs and lows, lessons learned, kind of the type of stuff we enjoy doing. And so I thought it was a long shot, but submitted the request, and to my surprise, he agreed to do it. We had proposed flying back from the States to do it with him in Austria and Belgium, Vienna being where he's from, Belgium where the Grand Prix was going to be a couple days later. So my favorite part of the taping was actually probably flying with him on a plane that he was piloting from Austria to Belgium. And, I had heard that, he makes you take off your shoes before getting on his plane, which is common when flying private. But I had heard he did not like anybody using the plane bathroom ever. And I asked him that. He goes, "Oh, that's bullshit." And he's like, "Yeah, that was when I had a smaller plane way back when, and whatever." But he's just, one of those like blunt uber successful guys who was involved in so much. I mean, aside from being a few-time F1 champ and running the most successful team in the sport, he had a very successful commercial airline. At one point, still ran a private aviation business, and you know, was a guy who, while he grew up wealthy, his parents basically cut him off because he wasn't going to follow the traditional career path. They wanted to chart his own way in sport, and made it work. And so I don't know. I just had a lot of respect for him. Very kind man.
Just wanted to acknowledge some of the suggestions we're getting in, and you can talk about if any of these are on your list, Graham. Conor McGregor, Donald Trump, Sammy Hagar, Michael Anthony are just some of the suggestions. A lot of Conor McGregor.
Yeah, I think Conor McGregor and Donald Trump certainly would be fascinating. As you guys know, we were at the White House the day after the Capitol breach a year ago with Annika Sorenstam when she was getting awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which was obviously, regardless your political affiliations, a crazy day to have the opportunity to be at the White House and get insight into what was going on that day. I think having the chance to sit down with any head of state would be fascinating. Outside of Prince Albert, when we spent a couple days with him in Monaco, we have not done that before, and so that's something that have interest in doing for an upcoming episode. Certainly, like a sitting president, I think would be fascinating. And Conor McGregor, my gosh, he has lived an already colorful life. Just had a ton of business success in selling his, spirits company, and so I think he also would be really interesting to feature for an episode.
Graham, I don't know this one. I don't know where this came from. Somebody on Instagram wants to know if you can tell your Woody Williams story. Woody Williams, a Cardinal pitcher from the early 2000s or late 90s, said wants to hear your Cardinal winter warm-up story with Woody Williams.
Yeah, well, that's my idiot friend thinking he's funny. So when I was first starting out in eighth grade, and Daniel, for those that don't know, was who's running this and feeding questions, not the one who came up with that one. Actually, we grew up together, lived in the same neighborhood, and have known each other for a long time and just started working together in the past year. But when I was first starting out with an internet radio show when I was in eighth grade, I'd always show up to events to try and convince people to do an interview with me on my then non-existent platform and show that I had yet to start. So, being from St. Louis, Cardinals winter warm-ups, where they get all the baseball players out to sign autographs for fans, etc. And so I bring these typed out letters that I have for most of the members of the Cardinals baseball team, and I would just kind of hang out in the hotel lobby, and when I'd see one of them, I'd go up, kind of explain what I was doing, and give them this letter in hopes that maybe I'd get a call back. And to my surprise, Woody Williams, who was one of the stars of the baseball team then, actually called me, much like Ernie Banks did, and Will Clark, who had just guided the Cardinals to the pennant, Bob Feller, who was a baseball Hall of Famer. And it was crazy that a eighth grade kid was I was in awe that I'd come home from school, and one day my mom's like, "Oh yeah, Ernie Banks called for you." It's like, what do you mean? And so that kind of gave me the early motivation to keep doing it and spend more time and energy, because these guys, just because they wanted to be nice, were giving me these opportunities. So, yeah, there are like so many people that, had no business kind of spending the time with me that gave me a chance. And so, I kind of learned early on that if you want to pursue something, just give it a shot. A lot of people tell you no or you can't, but if you believe in yourself, then you have a good shot at making it happen. So I just kind of always told myself if I was gonna fail at it, at least you fail knowing you invested all the time you could to make it a success.
Great. No more questions from Bryce. Getting some questions about O.J. Simpson, what it was like spending time with him, and your favorite takeaway or memory from that interview.
Uh, ooh. So I've gotten to know OJ over the years. I actually saw him this summer around his birthday in Vegas when we were there for Ice Cube, taping the episode with Cube over a couple days around his big three basketball games. OJ was somebody I first met in high school. I had met somebody connected to him, and similar to the pursuit of Bob Costas, called his agent like twice a week for a year and a half trying to get an interview with OJ. And one day, get a call saying OJ is going to be in St. Louis doing a signing. If you can be here at this date and time, and he'll sit down with you. And so I excused myself from high school and went and interviewed OJ during the school day, and ended up getting a lot of exposure because high school kid interviews OJ, kind of the human interesty novelty aspect of it caused me to get interviewed by Diane Sawyer on Good Morning America, and cable news outlets picked it up, etc. And ever since then, would occasionally see and talk to OJ. What I've said about him before is if you knew nothing about his past, you'd find him to be, affable, charismatic, fun to be around, golfed with almost every president back to Nixon, so has amazing stories. Interesting guy who I think would be obviously like make for a great episode of the show. So perhaps one day we'll be able to make that happen.
And right on cue on Facebook, Chris wants to know, do you have a holy grail? One person that you'd like to interview?
Oh, Chris. I mean, in short, no, not one person, but I mean, the Queen would be fascinating. I think the Sultan of Brunei would be really interesting. And then there are just so many folks that I haven't yet, from Serena Williams, Lance Armstrong, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, in sports to, I mean, Putin would be fascinating in politics to, we've started getting into the Hollywood space with having the opportunity to tape Tom Hanks and some folks like that. There's a ton of opportunity there to really take a deeper dive in getting into profiling actors. So, yeah, I have a list a mile long of people I'd like to tape. So we're barely scratching the surface. But again, if you guys have suggestions, comment on one of the platforms you're watching this, or email me, graham@grahambensinger.com, because we love the guest suggestions. They help a
Graham,
ton.
looks like we have time for about two more questions here.
Okay.
One from Pranav Singh. Please tell me something about Sir Sachin that we might not know about his personality. What was he like when you were with him?
I mean, he just went out of the way to be nice to me. After the interview, we exchanged numbers, and he sent me a nice text message. One of the things that I thought was funny, I heard he really liked music, and we taped the interview at his home, and then after that, I hopped in his car with him, and we drove around town, seeing areas relevant to his life, and it's very clear when somebody notices him, because even when we'd pull up alongside of somebody in the car, you could see when they realized who it was, and they start freaking out in the car. But I saw he had two phones, and I'm like, what's with the two phones? Because normally when you see people with two phones, it's like one's a work phone that they get from their employer, and one's a personal phone. And I'm like, he doesn't have an employer, so couldn't quite figure out what that was. His other phone was just for music, because he hated when he would be in his car and he'd get a call and it'd interrupt the music that was playing. So he got a second phone for that purpose. So I don't know. I just kind of thought that was funny. We included it in the episode, and it's just one of the things I like about the show, much like why we went to Italy for Valentino, Rossi, and why we've been to Alaska for an Iditarod champ, and on, is there are these sports that, while they might not have mainstream appeal in the United States, have massive followings. And to get kind of a peek behind the curtain and with the star of those sports is so fun. And so we try and kind of incorporate that kind of culture and experience into these episodes.
I lied. We have time for two more, and they're both good. Any potential to sit down with Tiger Woods, and how long does it take to line up those interviews? If you have a guest in mind, what's the process for lining them up?
Sure. I'd love to interview Tiger Woods. We, no news there by any means. Uh, it, Generally, it's a long process to book folks. Sachin took a couple years to book. We've had Bob Costas took more than 10 years to book. Sometimes it will be only a month or two in terms of booking and execution of the actual taping, but that's, I'd say, the exception is opposed to the norm. Sometimes you're dealing with the person direct that you want to feature. Other times it's with a rep. Sometimes you'll take the person out for a meal or have multiple calls with them, and other times it's all done on email. So it really kind of varies based on the person. There's no rhyme or reason behind it at all, but it is a process for sure. And look, I think outside of the preparation for the sit down interviews, most of my job is just sales because we handle everything in house. So in addition to the editing and producing of the show, it's the syndication and licensing of our content, the ad sales and sponsor development as well. And so we have like a really strong team of people, and that's why we've been so lucky to be able to keep growing the show. But it's all of it kind of, with the exception of the preparing for the work, most of what's involved with making the show grow is just sales. So yeah, that's I think a super important kind of skill set that's key in much of what you do in business.
Graham, last question, a good one to end on, from Terry Middleton on Twitter. What are some of
Hey,
your
Gary.
what are some of your daily habits that led to your success?
Well, first, I think it needs to be pointed out that I have a really, really long way to go to get to where I'd like to be. So we're only kind of scratching the surface. So I for sure think success is relative. But um, I, look, as kind of what I said earlier, the only thing I have going for myself with these interviews is we put a ton of research into the person we're sitting down with, probably 100 hours. And so that, inherently creates for better access than they'd otherwise be willing to give, even if they have no idea who I am beyond, the requests that came in. If the person sees you're prepared, they just lean in more and, kind of elevate their game to kind of rise to the occasion, even if there's somebody that doesn't really like doing interviews much because they see you've done your homework. I think that's kind of that mentality is kind of consistent across how I view things. In that, I always told myself, it's most likely what I'm going to do is going to fail because most things do. But at least if you fail knowing you invested all the time you could invest to make it a success. So while I don't know that that's the best advice, it was just always important to me to invest as much time as I could. And, I got super lucky that my parents believed in me and they built that kind of confidence and self belief because, regardless what you're pursuing, if you're trying to do something a little different, most people are going to say no or be discouraging. But I think as long as you believe in yourself and you're willing to stick with it, you have as good of a shot as anybody at making it a success. So I think that is the final question of the day. Thank you, Carrie, for that one. Again, if you want to find out where to watch the show outside of the platform you're looking at or watching on, GrahamBensinger.com has all those details. Continue to send in guest suggestions, Graham@GrahamBensinger.com. You can email them to us. We love them. If you're looking for our catalog of full episodes, behind the scenes content, exclusive access, join memberships on YouTube and Facebook. And thanks again for the opportunity to keep doing this. We are nearing the tail end of season 12 and have plans to, I'd love to do this for the rest of my career. So it means a lot that you guys keep tuning in, and we'll start doing these monthly. So if there's anything else you want us to cover on these, or ideas for ways to grow the show, feel free to send that in as well. This is very much a work in progress and constantly kind of trying to evolve it. So until then, thanks again for watching. And